Okay, so the shiur is called, wait, look at the title. What's the shiur called? Shiur is called, What is Your Relationship to the Beis Midrash? Okay, now, generally speaking, it's not the best idea to investigate an area when you have an agenda. Okay, like there's, following a question is one thing, but when you have an agenda, it could bias you. So if you find yourself in that situation, then the best thing to do is to express your agenda and be aware of it. Okay, so I have an agenda in this in choosing this topic, and I'd like to come back to the agenda at the end and see what we find out. Okay, which is like this: is my relationship to the Beis Midrash has been as follows. After high school, I went to yeshiva for 7 years, and I was in the dorm, and there was a Beis Midrash downstairs, right? So I was always in the Beis Midrash. That's where I did all my learning. Okay. Then I became a high school teacher and was so preoccupied with preparing for and teaching classes. I basically never learned in the Beis Midrash during the entire time that I was a high school teacher, because I was always either teaching in school or I was at home preparing on my own and learning at home. Okay. And even when I had chavrusas, they were always over the phone, and I found it more convenient to do this at home. Okay. Then when I started teaching in yeshiva last year and then this year, then I am in the Beis Midrash all the time. And it's a great experience to be in a Beis Midrash again. So I was thinking about that. And then this year, now that I'm only teaching in yeshiva, then I basically, my yeshiva is a 10-minute walk away. So on days when I don't need to do any errands, then I will walk to and from yeshiva. And it hit me a couple of weeks ago that, I walk to and from yeshiva 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and night. So I'm spending an hour each day pretty much walking to and from the Beis Midrash. Okay. So I was thinking about that on one of the really, really cold days when I was just walking and and being like, oh, I'm going all the way to yeshiva for this. And I was thinking, the phrase popped up in my mind that there's a chazal about the reward for walking to the Beis Midrash. And I was like, do I get that reward? Okay, because I'm like freezing in the cold, and do I get that reward for going there? So that's what led to this investigation. And then I thought of a couple of things why this might be relevant to you. Now, this is obviously anyone can listen to this shiur, but this is designed as a women's shiur. And, I don't know of the people who are listening to this, how many people went to seminary for a year or for more, but chances are that was probably your first exposure to being in a Beis Midrash. And then COVID hit, or I guess depending on when you were in seminary, and no one was in a Beis Midrash, and I don't know where you are now, but I wouldn't be surprised if your learning is not as Beis Midrash focused as it was when you were in seminary, if you were in seminary. So I kind of wanted to examine it from the perspective of the audience also, of what do Chazal say about learning in a Beis Midrash and not learning in a Beis Midrash as is related to you. Okay. And then my third agenda was, I was talking to a student recently of mine who said that as part of his efforts to develop a better relationship to learning, then he said that even when he's not learning, he wants to sit in the Beis Midrash as much as possible. And I remarked to him that there's a chazal that says, or it's a halacha actually. Let me show you the halacha. I should have brought this up in the thing. Give me 1 second here. Okay, here we go. Yeah, let's go here. Give me 1 second. So this is in the halachos of, I don't know where it is in the Shulchan Aruch, so I'm just looking it up in the Rambam, in Hilchos Tefla, and in terms of how you relate to a Beis HaKnesses, in terms of a shul. Okay, so he says, hold on. Yeah, so nope. Oh, that's it. Hold on. I think it's in Hilchos Tefla. Just 1 second. Yeah, here we go. So he's talking about Beis Knesses. So there are certain things like a shul. You're not allowed to use the shul for certain mundane personal uses. So you can't make it into a shortcut, or you can't do homework in the shul. So he says, Mishat Sarachli hikanes lebeis haknesses likros tinok ol chavero. Let's say you need to go into the shul to, I don't know what he says, to greet a baby. I don't know. I've never done that. To greet a baby or a friend. I don't know what that means. Yikanes v'yikra ma'at o yomar shmua. So you should go in and then either read a little bit of Torah Shebechsav or say a little bit of Torah Shebal Peh, and then you should greet your friend. Why? So that you're not going into the base to HaKnesses just for your own needs, meaning you use it for a mitzvah, okay? Let's say you don't know any pasuk or you don't know any Torah Shebal Peh, Yomer le'echa min hatinokos karali pasuk she'ata koreh. Oh, it must mean that you're going to pick up a kid from from his elementary school. So if you don't know pasuk, ask one of the kids who's in the shul, what pasuk are you learning? And then he says, "Oh, yishem ma'at bebeis haknesses," or just sit a little while in the beis haknesses, and then you can leave. Shahayeshiva sham meiske mitzvahi, because sitting in the beis haknesses is considered to be mitzvah involvement. Shenemar, as it says, "Ashrei yoshvei veisecha," as it says, happy or praiseworthy are those who sit in your house, in God's house. Okay, so sitting in shul, even if you're not doing anything, is a mitzvah. All right, and he says elsewhere that he says here, just one second, mutter lasos beis haknesses beis midrash. You can make a shul into a beis midrash. Aval beis midrash ein osin oso beis haknesses. You cannot make a beis haknesses into a base. Sorry, you cannot make a Beis Midrash into a shul. Why? Shekedushas Beis HaMidrash Yisera al Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. The holiness of a Beis Midrash is higher than the holiness of a shul. Umalim b'kodesh v'lo moridim. We go up in holiness and not down. So what he would say applies also to Beis Midrash, that if sitting in a shul is a mitzvah, certainly sitting in a Beis HaMidrash is also a mitzvah. So when the student told me that he would sometimes, just to cement a better relationship with learning, he would sit in the Beis Midrash, even if he's not learning. I wondered to myself, and I remember this mitzvah, I was like, what is the nature of the reward you get for just going to the Beis Midrash to sit there? Okay, so those are my three agendas. Now they're all on the table. And now we can approach this chazal knowing that those are our agendas. And let's hopefully remember to revisit this when we go back. Okay, any other random Beis Midrash things that you want to throw in there as your agendas before we start this?
Actually, yes.
Good.
To hold myself accountable, me and a few friends are hoping to start a Beis Midrash-esque program at the college that we're at currently. We don't know how it's going to look.
Okay,
but
good.
I'm hoping also that is kind of my agenda as well.
Okay, good. That's a great agenda to have. It's a great agenda to have, and we can be on the lookout for ideas and insights that will help you conceptualize that. Okay, good. Okay, so let's go to this mishnah. So this is a mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Oh, also I should say that this is also different than other shiurim that I've given, because I have not. I decided that I want to just basically prepare the groundwork and not come up with ideas ahead of time. So we're gonna be working on this together. So hopefully this is. I mean, I know in general we have participation, but hopefully this is more participatory than usual because I don't have ideas for you. Okay. All right. So. This is in Pirkei Avos chapter 5. In many editions, it's 14. But you should know when you learn Pirkei Avos, the numberings are different for the different editions. Okay, and this is part of a series of mishnayos that are talking about different classifications of midos in regards to different things. So, for example, I think before this it says there are 4 midos among people who give tzedakah. There are 4 midos among those who among students. There are 4 midos among whatever. Okay, so let's go. Arba midos beholche lebeis midrash. Okay, there are 4. Now, how would you translate midos? What's your go-to translation for midos?
Well, we spoke a few weeks ago about it being measure, but I guess general qualities of a person.
Okay, measures is good. Would you say qualities?
Yeah.
Okay, qualities. There's another translation I like to use, which is when we talk about God's midos. So God doesn't have qualities because he's one. So when you talk about, let's say, God's, Yugam midos, like Rachamim and Din and Hanun and Racham. So I like to say modes of behavior. Okay, like referring to patterns of action. Okay, so let's just keep that there. There are 4 midos, beholche lebeis midrash, among those who go to the Beis Midrash. Okay, and I'm not going to translate Beis Midrash, study house, I guess, if you had to say, but I think we're comfortable saying Beis Midrash here. Okay, so what are they? Holech ve'eno oseh. How would you translate that?
Goes and he just does nothing.
Goes. Okay, so that is going to be one of the interpretations. Okay, but let's just be as literal as possible. One who goes and doesn't do. Okay, one who goes and doesn't do. And what do we say about that guy or a girl? Schar halicha biado, the reward for going. Let's just say he has the reward for going. Okay. 2, ose ve'eno holech, one who does but doesn't go. Schar maase biado, the reward for doing is in his. He has the reward for doing. Okay, he has the reward for doing. Holech ve'ose, one who goes and does. Chassid is pious, and I don't like the translation of pious, but I have not found a better word for it. Okay, and lo holech v'lo ose rasha, one who doesn't go and doesn't do is wicked. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Okay, so let's do what we always do, which is to come up with questions and problems. And I believe we will find that the questions and problems are somewhat abundant for such a short Mishnah. Okay, what questions or problems do you have? Questions or difficulties? And you can just participate. You don't have to raise your hand. There's only 3 of you here.
Okay. So my school has Brandeis. I'm at Brandeis, and Brandeis has a Beit Midrash, but it's like in a basement, and it's kind of sad and out of the way.
Okay.
I personally there are certain perks of being in the Beit Midrash, but often I feel it more practical and convenient to learn in other places.
Yeah.
So I understand that this is trying to kind of get that in one place.
Yeah.
But I what if that place is not something that people enjoy going to and not something that really inspires? Could you share?
So that's a good question. And I'm going to formulate that question in a slightly broader way. And I'm going to put the question at the end of the list, because I think that kind of question is once we understand the idea, then we'll have to examine the application to this. Here's the way I'm going to ask it. Okay. Which is that, how definitive is this Mishnah, right? Is this saying that going to a Beis Midrash is always preferable to not going? What if it's a lame Beis Midrash, right? Or another student I was talking about this with said, he said that there is a Beis Midrash that would take, the closest Beis Midrash is 40 minutes away, right? So let's say you have an hour to learn. Okay. So should you really spend 40 minutes to go to the Beis Midrash and then turn around 5 minutes later and then go back? What if it's really far away? Okay. What if it's really far away? Yeah. Right. So what are the limitations of this Mishnah? Okay. So we're going to ask that at the end, because we need to understand what the Mishnah is saying before we can say how to apply it. But it is a good question. Okay. What are the questions? Other questions?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Sure.
So the first one is, I guess, what is the reward, just generally speaking?
Good. Yeah.
And also this might go along with that question, but I guess what kind of makes a Beit Midrash on this elevated status as opposed to just learning in your living room or something like that?
Okay, good. Right. Okay. So let's, I'm going to actually split this into 4 questions. Okay. So what is the schar halicha, right? Reward for going. Okay. And then what is the schar, what is it called? Schar maaseh, maaseh, reward for doing. Okay. Because those seem to be 2 different rewards. Right. In other words, if it just said he gets reward and the other guy gets reward, then I would say, what is reward? But here it's 2 different types of reward. And then your other question was, what makes the Beis Midrash superior to alternatives, right? What makes
Is it significance?
Yeah. What's the significance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the significance of the Beis Midrash, especially compared to alternatives? Yeah. And let's even ask a more basic question, and this kind of extends to Brooke's question also. What does Beis Midrash mean in this context? And what I mean by that is there is a halachic Beis Midrash that there are halachos that apply to. We just saw in the Rambam that it is usher to make a Beis Midrash into a shul. Okay, but let's say you go to a to Brandeis. I don't know what Brandeis' Beis Midrash is like, but you said it's in a basement. I assume it's not in the building. Was the building like built as a Beis Midrash? I'm assuming not, right? It's like
no, it's like they like found a space in the basement of one of the dorms that's like
okay,
on
good. That
the campus.
okay, good. So that's exactly what I'm wondering here, right? So is this talking specifically about a halachic Beis Midrash, or could this extend even to an ad hoc Beis Midrash? Okay, meaning like a place like an ordinary room dedicated to learning. Okay, and then you could also ask. Nava's question reminded me of something, which is I know many people who are wealthy enough that they have a Beis Midrash in their home, right? So is this specifically a communal Beis Midrash or even a personal at-home Beis Midrash? Okay, good. Yeah. Or is it even a place where lots of people learn, like you know how, all right, I don't know a place like this in real life. You know how like in Central Park or Washington Square Park is where all the people play chess, you know? So that's like a base chess. It's not a house. It's just a place where people gather to play chess, right? So what if you just have like a hangout spot where like the Chachamim hang out, you know? Is that a Beis Midrash? Or like there's another mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says your house should be a va'ad lachachamim. You should open up your house to the Chachamim, where Chachamim hang out when they're like, you know, talking with each other, socializing. Is that a Beis Midrash? So like, it's not so simple what the Beis Midrash is. Okay, so that's going to be a first question. Second question is, what's the significance of the Beis Midrash compared to alternatives? This question comes first because it's a definition question, and then we can ask about it. Okay, what else?
Specifically on the last one, why is the person who doesn't go and doesn't do, why is he wicked? Like that
exactly.
seems so
Okay,
extreme for somebody that's just happens to not
okay,
be learning.
Good. I was hoping someone would ask that. Okay, so why is the Eino Holech the Eino Ose a Russia, right? Isn't that like extreme? Okay, like in other words, maybe he's he's involved in Bittul Torah, right? And maybe he's an avarian, which is like a transgressor, but wicked? Exclamation point. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think you can probably ask a similar question about the third clause. What's weird about holech va'oseh chasid?
Are they not all pious? Or
all?
Or the first two?
Oh, the first two. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. So you could say that, right? You could say like aren't the first two pious? I think there's a different question. What is okay? Let's just talk about what pious means for a second. What's the shortage of chasid?
Chesed.
Chesed, right? And what does chesed mean?
Like,
I mean, I don't mean like a whole philosophical definition, but like, what's the basic meaning of chesed?
Like kindness or charity, I think we've defined it as.
Okay, so what? Let me push you with those two things. So we usually translate tzedakah as charity. What's the difference between tzedakah and chesed? And there is a halachic difference.
I'm not sure off the bat.
Okay, sure. Anyone else have an idea?
Who wants to say something?
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
Just based on the point that you brought up, I'm not sure who's brought it up because I wasn't watching them. About the Russia, why is it a Russia? I'd say that
Yeah.
we've yet to define a definition. We've yet to stop a definition of Beis Midrash. I would like to say that based on the Russia from the Seder, given Shahu Hosea's moment of klal, that a Russia would be somebody who pulls himself away from something central. So whatever we're going to define the Beis Midrash to be would have to be something like be very central in terms of communal service. It would have to be something that you can't just substitute with something else and that you cannot get rid of.
Okay, so we'll have to note that answer and come back to it when we're in the answering phase. And I guess your wife can report back to you about whether about what the meforshim say. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay. So going back to chesed and tzedakah. So what's the difference between chesed and tzedakah? And while you're thinking, I'm gonna actually pull up a source. Ooh, wait, no, I
I
can't
think
use it.
chesed is more of an idea and tzedakah is an action.
Okay, but chesed, okay, both of them can be ideas because you could translate like, they're midos of a Kadosh Baruch Hu also, but they're also both actions. Like gemilus chasadim is an action. So
I think tzedakah is more like, it's less conceptual. Like it's more like the ideas surrounding tzedakah are much more physically rooted as opposed to chesed, which is like it can have a physical base, but it's much more like a general idea and lifestyle.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think that actually plays out if you look at the way that chesed is used in Tanakh, because it does more often than not mean, or at least as often as not, mean action. Okay, so let's just quickly review the basic definition of chesed here. This is in the Rambam in the Mor Nevuchim 353. So he says, "Ukvar bi'arnu b'Pirish Avos." So, he explains this in Pirkei Avos. Ki chesed inyano hahaflaga be'ezi davar shehu flag bo. So chesed is, you know what? Let me just see if I have a translation of this that I translated. Give me 1 second here. It would be quicker to read in English. Chesed. Just look up chesed. Nope. Give me 1 second. It'll just be easier to read in English. I must have something on this. I must have a PowerPoint on this. Give me 1 second. Stop. Chesed. Let's see. Let's look at More Nevuchim translations. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. I have a translation here. Not a PowerPoint though, but a translation. Okay. So the Rambam says like this: this chapter treats the meanings of the three terms which we find necessary to explain, namely chesed, mishpat, and tzedakah. In our commentary on, this is not my translation, on the sayings of the fathers, we've explained the expression chesed as denoting an excess. Okay, chesed means excess. It is especially used of extraordinary kindness. Chesed is practiced in two ways. First, to bestow good to those who have no claim whatever upon us. Secondly, to bestow good to a person to whom it is due in greater measure than is due to them. Yeah. So in other words, chesed is extra, lifnim mishur sedin, beyond the letter of the law. And if you and what it means is when you either give someone something that you don't owe them, or you give something that you owe them, but in greater measure than you owe them. Okay. And he says in the I think this is I don't know whose translation this is. In the inspired writings, I think that means in Kesuvim, the term chesed occurs mostly in the sense of showing kindness to those who have no claim on it whatsoever. For this reason, the term chesed is employed to express the good bestowed upon us by God. Okay, fine. Tzedakah, though, is derived from tzedek, which means righteousness or uprightness. The meaning of righteousness is to bring every lawfully governed being in line with its lawful principle and to give to every existing thing that which is proper for its existence. So the best example of this is the mitzvah of tzedakah. The pasuk says, you give the poor person whatever he needs. Okay, so basic definition here, tzedakah is you give them what they need or what you owe them. Chesed means going beyond the letter of the law and giving them more than they are owed or more than they need or more than you're obligated in. So in light of that definition, so again, chesed means excess. So in line with that definition, what is weird about the phrase holech va'oseh chassid?
Sounds like he's extra for go.
Sounds like he's extra, but say it again.
It sounds like he's like there's no reason for him to go. He's just doing a lot of extra things by going.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, by doing.
Right. So I'm just going to phrase this in a slightly different way. I'm going to phrase it in a way that makes it parallel to the question about the Rasha. Okay. Why is the holech ve'oseh considered a chassid, right? A chassid, which means like beyond the letter of the law. Okay. Isn't he just doing what you're supposed to do in a Beis Midrash? Okay. In other words, forget Beis Midrash for a second, just to use as an analogy. If a kid goes to school and learns, would you say, oh, you're doing way more than you're obligated to do? Like you're a chassid? No, like kids are supposed to go to school. And like when you go to school, you learn. So this seems to be extreme also, right? Isn't this extreme? Isn't he just doing what you're supposed to do in a Beis Midrash? Okay.
So I have a comment on that.
Sure.
Possible answer.
Okay. So if it's a possible answer, then I'm going to ask for you to hold off. You'll have to be the judge of that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just make sure we get all the questions here. What other questions are there?
I was thinking, so is like, it's a very like the first two, it's he is the reward for going, or he is the reward for doing, and then the second two are he is pious and he.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. So your question is, why are the first two stated in terms of the result, and then the other two are in terms of the status, like the level?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
okay, yeah.
At various times in someone's life, they can be someone who goes and does, and then at other.
Okay, good. All right, those are two good questions. Okay, so why are the first two clauses expressed in terms of result, whereas the second two are expressed in terms of like status / level? Okay, and then the other question is, at what point does a person become categorized in one of these ways? In other words, how, for example, how often do you have to go and do in order to become a chassid, and how many like missed how many like
how much time?
Yeah, or I say how many instances would it take to demote you, right? Like, let's say you have a guy who, let's say me, right? Like in my yeshiva years, when I would learn the Beis Midrash all the time, and then I leave. When does the status expire? You know? Okay, good. I have at least one more question. Okay, and I'll see if you can get it here. Does anything strike you as weird about the use of this term here? What would you expect to say? One who goes to the base. There are four meters among one who goes to the Beis Midrash. One who goes and blank.
Learns,
right? Yeah, like one who goes and learns. That's what you do in a Beis Midrash. Like, Beis Midrash is not a place for action, right? It's a place for learning, you know? So let's ask here, which is, why does the Mishnah use the term oseh and ma'aseh instead of lomed and limud, right? That would make more sense. He has the reward for learning, not for doing, right? Okay, so now we have all of our questions here. Okay, so let me see if I can fit all of them on the screen. That's really, really small. Let me see if I can. Is that any better? All right. You can go closer to the screen if you need to. Okay, so now tell me what your answers are. Yeah, so Brooke, you had an answer to something, a possible answer.
There's so many more now. I was thinking, I'm trying to figure out which number it was.
Oh, sorry. You tell me what it is.
Okay. I don't remember, but I know like what my comment was gonna be.
Sure.
Which is about like the like avira, like the environment of the Beit Midrash. Like, you know, if you're chilling with a bunch of chassids and they're like talking about like, I don't know, God and like really interesting things, versus if you're in a Beit Midrash with a bunch of people who like slackers. There's even if they're learning, the quality, like I'd rather be in a conversation with people who are like very learned than learning with people who normally slack off.
Okay, good. Right. So
yeah.
I think that touches upon several questions. So that could touch upon the question of, what does Beis Midrash mean? Like, maybe maybe what makes the Beis Midrash is the people, right? Meaning maybe like hanging around a bunch of people who are actually like involved in learning is Beis Midrash, or you can say that there's a presumption that the average Beis Midrash will have a higher chance of having people in it who are involved in learning than the average, street corner, like, so it could be that the Chazal are agreeing with what you're saying, yeah. And then you mentioned the environment. Maybe that is the significance of the Beis Midrash, that the environment is gonna generally be conducive to people talking about Torah and Chachma. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have answers or directions?
Yeah, the question as to why the word oset is used instead of learning.
Yeah.
Something that, like, an idea that I have heard of, like, if you're in a, guess, like, stereotypical Beit Midrash, that's defined as just like a room that has a lot of, religious books, and you're learning and you're doing your thing, and somebody comes in, you see that they need help with their groceries or something like that. If you don't take what you're learning and put it into practice and action and actually do it, it's not necessarily that it's futile, but like you're missing the point. So it's possible that this kind of drives that home.
Okay, very good. So sneak peek, okay. The meforshim are split into two camps, okay. There are meforshim who learn that this mishnah is about learning, and then there are is essentially about learning in the Beis Midrash, and then there are mefarshim who learn that this mishnah is essentially about the relationship between your learning and your asiyas hamitzvos. You're doing mitzvos, okay? And the main proponent so most of the mefarshim learn it the first way, but Rבינו Yonah is the main proponent of the second one, that it's about doing, about like your learning culminating in mitzvos, okay? And the main argument that they have for them is exactly what Nava said, which is that the very fact that it uses the word oseh means putting into practice what you learn, okay? The weird thing about that is, why would we frame it in terms of a Beis Midrash? Now you could say that that's because it's talking about the relationship of your learning, in general, but that's what they say. Okay, so good. So that's going to be Rבינו Yonah's approach. Okay, good. Anyone else have anything to say before we go to the mefarshim? I'm going to hold off on my ideas because I kind of got my ideas from the mefarshim, whatever ideas I got.
I was thinking also for the question, I think I asked it, but also, why is the person who doesn't go and doesn't do, why are they wicked?
Right.
I'm wondering if it's just within the context of a person who like is actively not going and is actively not doing, like, when they have the time to, when they are able to, they're choosing not to, which is the wicked act, instead of just like, sometimes
good.
you don't have time.
So we actually forgot to ask two very important questions, which is let's see, where should I put this here? Actually, let's make this all into one question, which is, what defines each of these people? In other words, like, why, for example, why doesn't this guy, doesn't the fourth guy go and learn? Is he like intentionally like rejecting Torah, or does he just not have the ability? Right? Like, and like Nava said, like, it sounds like there is some sort of intentional evil here. Otherwise, why are we calling him a Russia? Yeah. Okay, so let's start doing mefarshim here. And
I actually have an answer to, I think, to one of the questions.
Sure.
Of why is there a reward for going? Because when you're going, you're preparing for what you're doing. So like anytime you prepare, you get a mitzvah also. Or you build.
Good.
You fast Erev Yom Kippur and you get a mitzvah.
Okay, good.
So, I mean, you don't fast Erev Yom Kippur. You eat Erev Yom Kippur.
Yeah, right.
Reward.
Okay, good. So I actually, this is not on the docket. I mean, if we're interested in it, we could do it. But I was looking at the mefarshim on Al Torah. So the Maharal asks a question on this, which is, which mitzvos do we say this for, and which ones do we not? And he says we don't say this for every mitzvah, but certain mitzvahs we do. Like I think your example is correct, that by eating on Erev Yom Kippur you get rewarded for that. Or there's a mitzvah of when you running, going to shul, you get a mitzvah for going and for davening. But then there are other mitzvahs. So the Maharal says, if you go to buy a lulav, that's not a category of you get rewarded for going to buy a lulav. You just get a reward for actually doing it. So the question is, I'm going to actually change this into a question, even though I do think it works for this. Hold on just a second here, which is, to what extent does this apply to other mitzvos? Okay, so let's now start the meforshim here. Okay, now the first,
wait,
yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, I was thinking about it also in the context of, again, like the environment of something where,
yeah,
if let's say you go to Beit Midrash and everyone's learning, you're more likely to learn because you're also just like surrounded by svarim, and
right,
like it activates a certain part of yourself.
Yeah.
And I was also just thinking, like, does that, like, I think just putting yourself in a position where you are more likely to do, as it says,
Yeah.
might like be a mitzvah in itself.
Okay,
where
good.
You make yourself more likely.
Okay, good. So the Rambam takes that approach. Okay. Nice. Okay. All right. So let's go to the meforshim now, and we'll see elements of all of what three of you said reflected in these. Okay. So we're starting off with Rashi, and we're not reading it from Rashi. Okay, and I'll tell you why. There's something sketchy about the Rashi on Pirkei Avos, and I don't remember what it is. It's either it's not Rashi, or it is, or the manuscript is corrupt, or there are a bunch of different versions. So that's why Al-Hator doesn't have Rashi. But what we're going to read is three meforshim who are taking Rashi's approach. Okay, and we're going to kind of treat that. We're going to call all of them Rashi. Okay. So starting off, Ovadim Bartanura. Okay, this is the commentary on the Mishnah. Ovadim Bartanura was technically one of the early Achronim, but he's cool. Okay, so he doesn't explain the whole Mishnah. He says, Holech ve'eno oseh, one who goes but doesn't do. Holech leBeis Midrash, he goes to the Beis Midrash. Lishmoa, to listen. Ve'eno shoneh, but he doesn't learn. Velomed, I don't know how you want to say sorry, the in of shon of velome. He doesn't, like, let's just say actively learn. Velomevin, and doesn't understand. Okay. So it means that he is going there, he's positioning himself to do this, but he's just not understanding what's going on. Okay. Hold that thought. Okay, again, we're going to treat all these as one Rashi. Osev eno holech, one who goes, who does but doesn't go. Lomi b'shona b'beis hamidrash shebeveso. He learns. He actively learns in the study in his house. Okay, so not the communal Beis Midrash. All right, so that's one interpretation. Rav Shimshon, Rav Yaakov Rabbi Shimshon, who was one of Rashi's students, says like this: Ve'eno oseh, he doesn't do klum, anything. Okay. Now, it obviously doesn't mean he literally doesn't do anything. We'll take this in the context here. Schar halicha, that guy who goes but doesn't do anything, has the reward for going. Why? Shetarach l'shem mitzvah, because he toiled for the sake of a mitzvah. Okay, so this one is not like what Gula was saying. Gula was saying he's preparing. This is more like he put in the effort. Okay, and he's got an A for effort. All right, and then but doesn't go. Kagon, for example, Shalomi B'Zok Beso, he learns at home. Okay. All right. So that's the second of these things. And again, the third one, which is we're treating as Rashi, is the Rashbatz. Okay. So Rashbatz actually quotes Rashi. He says, Rבינו Shlomo Zal, Rashi explained this in Halimud in relation to learning, okay, as opposed to action. Shazehu inyan zos Mishnah, because this is the subject of this Mishnah. In going to the Beis Midrash, holding the Beis Midrash. Okay, let me just make this a little bit smaller here. Okay, so how does he explain it? V'holech ve'eno shomea, ve'eno shoneh v'lomed, yesh lo schar halicha. One who goes but doesn't listen and doesn't actively learn has reward for going. Ose, one who does, shu lomi b'veso, learns at home, ve'eno holech lebeis midrash, and doesn't go to the Beis Midrash, yesh lo schar maseh, has the reward for doing. Holech lebeis midrash v'nosen sham. Okay, now he's actually saying something new. One who goes to the Beis Midrash and noseh v'nosen sham, and has discussions / arguments there. Zos hi hamida she'ein lamala mimena. This is the midah of which there is none higher, which is the midah of Chasidim. Okay, lo holech v'lo shonim bebeso, one who doesn't go and doesn't even learn at home. Zosi hayoser ra. This is the worst, and is the midah of the wicked. Shekomi she'efshar lo lasok b'Torah. For anyone who is able to learn, to be involved in Torah, ve'eno osek, but doesn't involve himself. Alav hakasuv omer, the pasuk says about him, ki devar Hashem baza, for he has disgraced, or he has degraded the word of Hashem. That Bamidbar 15:31. Commotion is Pirkei, okay, as Chazal say in Pirkei. Okay, so treat all this as Rashi. Okay, so let's just review and then let's go through the questions and see what questions it answers and then what we need to develop here. Okay, so one who goes but doesn't do. Let's just go back to the Mishnah. Okay, one who goes but doesn't do means that he goes to the Beis Midrash, but he's not actively learning and not understanding or not listening. So he's basically just like hanging out in the Beis Midrash. Okay. All right, right. So he's going like, or like maybe you can relate to this based on your observations or maybe based on yourself. I think there are a lot of teenagers who are in school, in high school, who just go there and they just like are basically like spacing out for the entire time, and not because they lack the ability necessarily. They're just like not whatever. They just, for whatever reason, they're just not learning. Okay. So they get the reward for going, which Rav Yaakov Rabbi Shimshon says that he is exerting himself for the sake of a mitzvah. Okay. And that's why he gets rewarded. That's what reward for going is. Then one who does but doesn't go means he is learning, but he's just learning at home. Okay. And he gets the reward for learning. Okay. He's learning this as a Maseh means learning. One who goes and does is a chassid, which means he goes. And did you catch what the Rashbatz says the significance of, what does the Rashbatz say is the difference between learning in the Beis Midrash and learning at home? He focuses on one aspect.
Involving himself?
Well, the guy at home is also involving himself.
He's interacting with other people.
He's interacting with other people, right? Okay, so he's involved in discussions and debates with other people, right? Which I think sheds some light on our answers here. Oh, you know what? Let's just do this. I know we were just reviewing, but let's just go through here, okay? So, whatever. we'll finish this. Lo holech v'lo oseh, he doesn't go and he doesn't do. I mean, he doesn't even learn at home. But why? So he says because he is. So he's capable of learning, but he chooses not to learn. Okay, so now let's go through and see which questions he answers. So this is an interesting thing. What does Beis Midrash mean according to Rashi? Again, meaning all of them. And this is going to be very interesting, okay? And I think the answer was in the Rashbatz that we just did. In that same line. What's the only quality that they use to differentiate a Beis Midrash from your own house?
Interaction with other people.
Interaction with other people, right? So according to this, anything that is any learning environment that involves other people that you can discuss with is a Beis Midrash, which means right now we are involved in learning in a Beis Midrash according to that standard. Okay, because he's saying that is the benefit of the Beis Midrash. Okay. So you can pat yourself on the back. Okay, no, we have to understand why this is. But okay, so let's just go on. So according to him, what is the significance of the Beis Midrash compared to the alternatives? So the answer obviously is the fact that you can discuss with other people. But why would that be significant, do you think? Why is that going to make a Beis Midrash superior?
Because it's designated to be that space.
But why does that make it better though? Like I can designate something to be, I don't know, like I could designate restaurants are designated eating places, but that doesn't make my meal better in a restaurant than it does at home necessarily.
Yeah, but at home, you're like, let's say you have trouble eating on a schedule. When you go to a restaurant, you know that then you're going to eat. When you're at home, you'd have to find a time and designate that time.
Okay, so I do think that that is a great answer for the Mishnah, which is that because Beis Midrash is an environment designated for learning, then it'll be easier to get into the habit of learning there, or your learning will be better because you have no other distractions. You know, like the difference between like, I don't know, working out by lifting weights in a gym versus doing it at home. You know, there's more environmental cues, more environmental factors. That's a great answer, but there's nothing that I saw in Ovadim Bartanura or Ya'akov Rishon or the Rashbats that says that. So it's a good answer. I just don't think they're saying it, because if they were saying it, they would say it. You know. So what do they say is better about being in the Beis Midrash? Again, it comes back to this line: what's better about having discussions and arguments with people than by learning by yourself?
I feel like just generally speaking, you gain more from that. You get outside of your own perspective and grow through that.
Right. So there are many, in other words, the quality of the learning itself is better because you're getting feedback from more people. You're hearing ideas from more people that you wouldn't have come up with on your own. You're seeing outside of your limited perspective. You're subjecting your ideas to critical analysis. You know, like people are going to like, if you're just learning at home, no one's going to jump in to correct you except yourself. Whereas your chavrusas or your rebbeim are going to be there. You're going to meet people who are superior to you in terms of learning. So you're going to like gain from them. So it's just the actual activity of learning. See, Brooks' answer, which again is a good answer. Brooks' answer is basically saying your relationship to the learning will be better. But the Rashbats is saying, it's not your relationship to the learning. The actual activity of learning will be better because it involves more people. Okay. Okay. So now, why does the Mishnah use the term oseh and masa instead of lomed v'limud? So I think he's just saying that that's what it means. He's saying that it does mean learning. Okay. And he's not answering that question. They're not answering that question. What is the reward for going? So this is something that who answered this? Ya'akov Rabbi Shimshon answered. But we need to explain, okay? This is a guy who is going to Beis Midrash, not learning or understanding anything, but he gets rewarded because he toils on behalf of mitzvah. So what do you think that means? Like, what is the nature of that reward of going? And here we have to use our own mind because he's not spelling it out.
Maybe more satisfaction. I don't know if that's necessarily a reward, but because he worked for it, he almost like can feel the gaining that he gets from his learning.
Okay, so but he's not learning though. That's the thing, right?
Right.
Yeah. And let me just give a little reminder for those who were in my Kain and Hevel series. Okay, earlier after Sukkot. So we talked a little bit about reward, and the Meiri gave a very expansive definition of reward. That reward could be basically any benefit that you get from the activity. You know, whether it is reward in olam haba or reward in terms of like hashgacha pratis, or whether it's reward in terms of the impact that the mitzvah has on you. So with that broad sense of reward, you know, so you can say God will reward him for going there because he toils on behalf of the mitzvah. And you could say that affects his olam haba, but like, is there an actual impact that it has on his own level of perfection by toiling to do a mitzvah? And by the way, like Geula said, I mean, I know this is not what Geula said, but Geula said this applies to other mitzvahs. the Ya'akov Rabbi Shimshon is saying that this does apply to other mitzvahs. This is not just true of the Beis Midrash. This is true of like if you toil to I don't know, to like give tzedakah, and you don't actually, let's say like you let's say like there's a volunteer event, right, where you are volunteering like at a soup kitchen and you get the date wrong, right? Someone told you the wrong date, so you go there and like you drive all the way out there, and then there's no opportunity. So we would say you get the reward for toiling l'shem mitzvah. What is the nature of that reward? So I'll theorize here, okay, which is that every person has like a limited amount of energy that they invest in different pursuits, and there's certain things that you want to do, but like it takes a certain amount of time and energy, okay, and are not worth it. Or there's something that like takes an extreme amount of time and energy, and because you invest a lot of energy in it, then it becomes part of your value system, going out of your way to give tzedakah or to exercise or to eat healthy, so I think that like the best way to do that is you exert yourself and you do the action. But if you exert yourself and for whatever reason you can't do the action, you are still rerouting that energy and committing yourself to making it a value, even if you don't actually do it. So that guy who like makes sure that, he says like, okay, I might not be understanding everything in shiur, but I'm going to show up to shiur every day. That person will become more attached to learning than if he said, I'm just not going to go to shiur, so you are changing your midos and your personality to become more and more attached to that value system, even if you don't actually do the thing itself. I think that's what it means that he gets the reward for going. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like another, like on that, you kind of gain perspective too when you invest in something and it doesn't turn out the way that you think it will, or you get something out of it that you weren't expecting. You still gain from the experience, and it still kind of takes you out of kind of what you thought was going to happen. And so, like you grow more attached to that.
Right. That actually was one of the Meiri's examples. He only used it. So he used an example for Averos, that this happens with Averos. And the example he gives there, and we'll have to like reverse engineer for mitzvos. He says for Averos, this is in the context of Avera Gureros Avera, that if you do one Avera, it leads to another. So he says, let's say you break into someone's house to steal something. Okay. And you think the guy's not home. And then you realize that the guy's there, and like you get into a fight and you end up like injuring or killing him, so you went in to do one Avera, and by accident it led to another Avera. Okay. So too with mitzvos, let's say you go to shul, or let's say you go to Beis Midrash to learn, but when you're there, you end up bumping into someone who says, oh, there's a shiva call that we need, to go to. Like, can you come with me to the shiva call? And then that leads to another mitzvah by accident, by happenstance, or you end up being the 10th person, not you, but you end up being the 10th person for a minyan, right? So by putting yourself in a good situation, it could incidentally lead to even more good actions. Okay. What is the reward for doing? We don't need to explain that because you're talking about learning here. And obviously we know why learning is beneficial, because it's true and it leads to good actions. Okay. Okay. According to this guy, to the Rashbats, why doesn't the fourth guy go to learn? So he said he's intentionally rejecting Torah, which must mean, so now this is like what Geula's husband said, that it's like the Ben Russia in the Haggadah, that it's not just that like he can't afford to, or he's not cut out for it. He is like Davka, he's able to be involved in learning and rejecting it. Okay, that is a Russia. And you notice, by the way, let's both these questions at the same time. Okay, and this is a little subtle. How is the Rashbat defining Russia and Chassid in this context? I'll give you a hint.
Someone who doesn't involve himself and he degrades.
Right. So that's what the definition of Russia of the guy is. But I'm saying, how are we answering the question of, isn't this extreme to call him a Russia and to call the other guy a Chassid? Again, with the Chassid guy, he's just doing what you're supposed to do in the Beis Midrash. He's not a Chassid.
I think maybe the Chassid is getting other people involved. It's not just that he's involved, it's that he's like actively bringing other people into the fold. And the Russia is kind of like, he's doing the opposite, where he's like creating an environment where people aren't motivated to learn and don't see the value in it.
Okay, so you are correct for the Meiri and the Sforno. Okay, I don't see evidence for that in the Rashbats. I see a little bit of evidence in the sense that he is involving himself in discussions with other people, but I don't see any evidence that the Rashbats says that he's bringing other people in who wouldn't be there. Okay, I do see a little bit of evidence. You're right. For the Rashbats, he does say he's degrading the word of Hashem, which seems to imply that it's going to be degraded in other people's eyes. So I'll give you that. But I think, why is he calling him a chassid? He's saying chassid does not mean you're doing extra. He says chassid just means the highest level. And he doesn't mean Russia means you are evil. He's just saying it's the worst. Okay, so he's using chassid and Russia not in the technical definition sense, but in the sense of like, oh, you're just the best, or like, oh, that's just the worst. Okay, so he's using it basically to show the extremes. All right. Why are the first two clauses expressed in terms of result instead of status or level? I think it's because of that, because it's showing that you are, the best is a distinct state. And if you're anything less than the best, then we don't say like you're middle. That doesn't really add anything. We say what it is that you are. And at what point does a person become categorized in one of these ways? So what would you say? Like, does one time going there make you a chassid, or does one time not going there make you a Russia? I don't think so. So how often would you have to do this in order to be defined in one of these four categories, do you think?
I think you have to establish a pattern of behavior.
I think so also. I think this is just talking about pattern of behavior, okay? And then how definitive is this mishnah? Is it saying that going to a Beis Midrash is always preferable to not going? And what if it's a lame Beis Midrash? What if it's really far away? What are the limitations? Now, this is a lot of questions here, but let's just address Brooke's question, which is would, according to this mishnah, would it be saying that you should learn in the lame basement Beis Midrash versus other places? If so, why? If not, why? And what are the parameters? What would you say, Brooke? This is your question, so you can answer it.
I mean, I think it's about the discussions that take place. Like,
Correct.
Where is the learning the best? And it doesn't
Right.
have to be in that Beit Midrash. If you establish another place, like
Right.
a room where people go to have these sorts of discussions, then you wouldn't go to the technical Beit Midrash, you'd go to this room.
Exactly, right? So according to this interpretation, I'm not saying according to everybody, because we'll see other interpretations. According to this one, then it is what really matters is that you are involved in discussing with other people, whether it is another room, whether it's on Zoom, right? Whether it's on the moon. I don't know. We should make a children's book about this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the essence is that you're learning with other people. Okay. And let's just go to Nava's agenda. Okay. So Nava, does this shed light on anything about your project of wanting to start a Beis Midrash program? Did you get anything out of this for that?
I mean, in the practical sense of planning how it works, I would say no, but in the sense of what defines a Beit Midrash and what we have to say on creating the environment and like just establishing routines and making it accessible, I do think that I definitely gained in that area.
Okay, good. Right. So what would be the essence of a Beis Midrash that you would keep in mind for starting this program? Like, what would you try to maximize?
Like just discussions and arguments and a place in which like people can comment on each other's ideas and like getting,
right. So in other words, like, let's say, and I'm not like, like throwing shade at programs like this, but like if there are places that call themselves a Beis Midrash, but really it's just a glorified lecture hall, like it's a one-directional thing. So that's something, because there's at least opportunity for questions, but what you really want to create is a meeting place of ideas, where people can really exchange ideas. And the more you can incorporate that, the better.
Yeah, okay. That's what we want to do. Like we want to have lectures occasionally, but we want like student-led chaburo and like, not like it's not formal. It's very much just like student-led and what they want in these conversations.
That's really good. Formal and informal, I think, is a really good dichotomy, and the informal really lends itself to this thing. Okay, in terms of my agenda, would you say that I get this type of reward for walking in the cold for an hour a day for the Beis Midrash?
Yes.
I would say yes too, right?
Okay,
In other words,
good.
the fact that like, if it was very easy to go, so then, yeah, I would like, there'd be some dedication, but if I have to like, it's like, what grandparents say, I had to walk 15 miles in the snow to get to work. It actually solidifies
both ways.
Yeah, both ways, right? It has to, it solidifies your relationship to that value system, So I think I am actually attaching myself more to learning by going there. And what about the student I mentioned who sits in the Beis Midrash even when he's not learning? What reward does he get, would you say, for like going to the Beis Midrash and sitting there even if he's not learning?
He's soaking in knowledge from others.
So number one is it's funny, it's ironic, he actually gets the reward for learning, even though he's not actively learning, because he's hearing conversations, right? And he's also getting this reward for like toiling to go there, even if he doesn't actually learn there. He's cementing his relationship to the Beis Midrash. Okay, now let me give you a choice. As oftentimes I over-prepared, okay, we have arguably three more approaches, okay? We have the Meiri and the Sforno, who give beautiful interpretations here that are not exclusively about learning. And then we got the Rבינו Yonah. Also with the Rambam that I mentioned that Brooke is going according to the Rambam. Rבינו Yonah also is about mitzvos. And this is going to like take some real work here. Would you like to stop for today and then do this next time? Or do you want, how much time do you have, let's say? Do you want to do like, maybe we could do the Rambam really quickly and then save the big stuff for later. What do you guys want to do? Because I know it's Google Lab, that's why I'm asking.
I think I'm happy to do the Rambam and then save the rest for next time.
Okay. Nava, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, good. So let's do that then. Okay, so the Rambam. So I'm pairing here the Rבינו Bachya or Bחיי, however you say it, with the Rambam because he quotes the Rambam. Okay, so he says like this. Rבינו Bachya says, Holech ve'eno osa, and neither of them give full interpretations. Okay, so we just gotta like piece it together. Klomar, sheholech liyeshiva aval eno lomed. Okay, so he goes to yeshiva but doesn't learn. Okay, so that's like Rashi. Schar halicha biado. The reward for learning is the reward for going. He has the reward for going. He has the reward for going. Okay, so fine. Mimasha kasuv. From what is stated, okay, this is by the Korban Pesach. Bnei Yisrael went and did what Moshe said. Okay, and that is Shemos 12:28. This pasuk gives reward for going and reward for action. Okay, so we'll have to explain this. And then he says he does, but doesn't go. Shalomi beveso, for he learns at home but doesn't go. And the Rambam writes ... And now we're just going to switch over to the Rambam himself instead of someone paraphrasing the Rambam. So the Rambam says like this: Amru beholchi lebeis midrash. Okay, this is the technical point. It said, the statement. Those who go to the Beis Midrash, Ratzalomar really means bi halicha Beis Midrash, in regards to going to the Beis Midrash. Okay, this is a technical point. Can you figure out what question we didn't actually list this question. What's bothering the Rambam here? Well, he's commenting on when it says there are four midos among those who go to the Beis Midrash. Well, as Rambam has said, this means in regards to going to the Beis Midrash. It's a technical point.
Maybe instead of in those who go to the Beit Midrash, maybe instead, like there are people who specifically don't go to the Beit Midrash,
exactly.
But they are included.
Yeah, so he's saying don't take it literally that there are four types of people who go to the Beis Midrash, because two of these guys don't go, right? The Osev Einoholik, the guy who learns at home, and then the Rasha. So the Rambam is saying, in regards to going to the Beis Midrash, there are four behaviors. Okay, fine. So then he says like this, and this is now the answer. Vizbonin, take note. Heach kara es hamarbe lasagel atzmo es hamaalos. How it calls someone who devotes himself to attaining perfections, okay, of character and intellect. The Rambam goes on to say, a chassid, okay, and note how it calls one who is lazy in attaining perfections for himself, Rasha. Okay, so Rבינו Bachya just defines these two personalities as the same as Rashi. Okay, he adds this thing about Bnei Israel went and did what Moshe said, and then he quotes the Rambam. He hands the mic over to the Rambam, and the Rambam says, why is it called him a chassid? Because he's going out of his way to acquire good midos for himself, and the Rasha is going out of his way to avoid things that would acquire him good midos. Okay, so Brooke, do you remember what you said? That I said, oh, that's the Rambam. I know you said.
I think you put yourself in an environment where you're more likely to do something.
Exactly. Okay, good. So the Rambam is not focusing on the quality of learning, nor is he focusing on your relationship to learning. What he is focusing on is he's saying you are a person who is going out of your way to put yourself in a scenario where you are more likely to get perfections of midos and of intellect. And if you could put yourself in a situation like that and you avoid it, then you are a Rasha, because you are like needlessly depriving yourself of the opportunity for perfection. Okay, so they don't even, and the Rambam, by the way, does not go and explain the rest of the Mishnah at all. He just focuses on what a chassid and what a Rasha are, and he goes on and elaborates on that. And that's great Rambams. It's just beyond the scope of this shiur. So the way they learn it is that the Mishnah is really about how far are you willing to go to put yourself in a scenario where you are going to develop good midos. Okay, so an example of this, I think, would be, I think there are people who go to seminary, for example, or yeshiva in order to learn. Okay, and that's great, obviously. Okay, I'm not knocking that. Okay, but then there are other people who their main motive in going there is not to learn, but they know that if they surround themselves with people who are devoted to Torah and mitzvos for a year, then that's going to rub off on them, and it's going to. Sorry, I just knocked everything down. And it's going to rub off on them, and it's going to make them care more about Torah and mitzvos, and it's going to make them develop good midos. That's what the Rambam is calling a chassid, is you put yourself in an environment where you or you do actions that are going to give you good midos that you wouldn't have ordinarily gotten if you hadn't done that. Okay, and I'll give you an example that's not in the realm of going to the Beis Midrash. I'm saying it's not limited to environment, and I've told this example before, but when I was during my yeshiva days, I used to be very uncomfortable around poor people who like have clear like mental illnesses, who are like smelly and who are rude, and who, you know, like I'm sure you've seen these people who are like, you know, very uncomfortable to be around. So, you know, when these people come around in Far Rockaway, then like, you know, and they come to the yeshiva, then there was someone whose job it was to go and like give them tzedakah and like talk to them and stuff like that. So I forgot when I did this in yeshiva, but I put myself in that job in order to force myself to interact with these people so that I can overcome those resistances, you know? So that would be an example like this. Also, I'm not like patting myself on the back for being a chassid. I'm saying like, you know, it's not all about environment. It could be it could be going out of your comfort zone in other areas if you know that going out of your comfort zone will get you good midos. Okay, so that's another thing, and again, I think they're only answering the question of what is a chassid and what is a rasha here. And Rבינו Bachya says that this is also true for mitzvos in general. That even going to do any mitzvah is you know, you're getting a reward for two things. There's the mitzvah itself. So let's say like you know, going to shul to daven, right? So you get the reward for davening, but then even going out of your way, it's easier to just be at home, but going out of your way to put yourself in a situation where you're going to develop a better relationship to learning, interact with more people, you know, have better kavana, that itself is it has its own reward. And you get perfection from that, and that makes you considered to be a chassid. Okay, so I think that is it for today. And B'li Neder, we will continue this next week, applying it to other areas of learning and into doing mitzvahs. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank
joining. It's
you.
nice to be back. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care. Have a good Shabbos. Bye.